Jay here for Stretford, Paddock, and this is the Tier 1 Transfer Podcast. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Ronaldo Brown. Ronaldo, how are we doing?
Doing great, man. How are you doing?
I'm all right, yeah. Bit of a different setting
Jay?
here today. Yeah, I'm in the kids' room. These aren't my posters, in case you're wondering why I've got Brian Robson and Roy Keane behind me. Yeah, and also joining us is our guest from Sky Sports, James Cooper. James, thanks for coming back on the channel.
Not at all. You've crossed the streams. You've got Marvel in one corner and DC in the other. I mean, I'm massively into my comics, so you don't do that. It's like Nike and Adidas. You wear one or the other.
I'm in full agreement with you. I'm into the comics as well. Can't do that.
I will speak to my children, my son, and tell him what he's let me down. He's embarrassed me in front of everyone.
They're good posters, though. Don't worry, he gets away with it. Especially Superman 1. If you had that, we wouldn't be doing a podcast.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Phew, that was close. I have enough trouble just making sure he's a United fan, so when it comes to his comics, he can do what he wants. Talking of United, of course, lots to talk about. James, I'm going to kick off. I'm just going to ask you a little bit about the sort of the main talking point over the last few days has been Project Big Picture. There's been a lot of bit of a backlash, I should say, about it. Really, what have you made of it, and do you think that this plan, this project, can become a reality?
I think it's a really difficult thing, and you probably wouldn't expect me to say anything else different, bearing in mind my employers. It makes it difficult maybe to have an opinion on this, but I will have an opinion. I think, having talked to lots of people, look, I think the major positive about it is it might open up a debate whereby something does happen. I don't think I think we're all in agreement that basically all the ingredients that have been kind of put on the table aren't right. Some of them are, some of them aren't. And I think, having spoken to people throughout football at different levels, I think they're welcoming the chance to have a debate. I think there's no doubting that there's a problem in terms of finance at the bottom end of the tier. And I think there is a responsibility at the top end of the tier kind of to make that count and to look after some of the smaller teams. Otherwise, I can see a situation whereby, some of the teams that surround us, we've seen Macclesfield go there, albeit they're back thanks to a local investor yesterday. But, the likes of Oldham, the likes of Rochdale, some of those smaller teams that have all had relationships along the years with Manchester United, because we're talking about Manchester United right now, I think it is incumbent on some of the bigger cats at the top of the food chain to make sure that some of those smaller ones just carry on. Whether that means kind of regionalised leagues, whether it means kind of feeder teams into it, I think, if it was me, and as well as anyone else does, that my team's Ipswich Town, if I didn't have Ipswich Town in my life, it would be a worse place to be. And you look at the situation with Bury and things like that. These people have had their football teams taken away from them. And I don't think we can allow that situation to continue, no matter what the obstacles are, no matter what things are happening currently, obviously with COVID and some of the kind of money implications in the game. Something has to be done. I'm not suggesting big picture is the answer, but I think there are some answers within that.
Absolutely.
Did that sound like an answer, or did that sound like a fudge? I hope it sounds like some sort of answer.
No, it does, and I appreciate, obviously where you're coming from. But no, I think you mentioned there about something needs to be done, and you mentioned Macclesfield. We've seen it with Bury. We've seen it almost happen with the likes of Bolton and with Wigan. And that's just Greater Manchester we're talking about. I know there's clubs all over the country that have been affected, and you do think that it can't continue. We can't see clubs going under. I've got a few mates who are Bury fans, and they're just devastated. That's their club that's gone. And I know they've had a sort of a new club's been formed, but it's obviously it's not the same.
But I mean, something has to be done. And I mean, we can't keep taking the money tree of government to get all the answers. So we have to look at other solutions. So I think if it opens up a debate where people are talking very openly and working out what they can do, I think it's great. I think there's a problem in it within some of the voting rights. I don't think it can give even more power to the more powerful teams there. I think it has to be a Premier League where everyone has an equal voice. But I think equally, we need to look outside the kind of bubble of Manchester United and the top six and think, it's about a game of football. It's about our country. It's not about, 6 or 7 teams at the top of the food chain.
Absolutely agree.
Really, I have to agree with you. But now going on to the last time we spoke, you seemed confident that United and Pogba would come to terms on a new deal. Why do you think that hasn't yet materialised?
Well, first things first, I think I said he'd stay, so I was right there. So I get a tick.
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
Other people I think the consensus has probably changed on that with Manchester United fans at the moment, not worrying whether he stays or goes, because simply he's not playing as a bigger part in Manchester United as he was when we had that conversation. I think it's something they'll look at. I think there is a little bit of kind of wriggle room there, probably less than there was simply because fans haven't come back and the economic situation is as good as it was. But I think, you get someone like Alexis Sanchez off the books, and something that does give a little bit more, economic will or economic power to give people like Pogba a new contract. But I think also, a lot of Manchester United fans would like him and other players to be accountable. And yeah, it'd be great if he had a new contract and you have 5 more years of Paul Pogba. But what you want is the Paul Pogba that all of you want, rather than the Paul Pogba that we've seen perhaps since the last part of that last season and the early part of this season, which isn't the world-class player we know he can be, albeit, you read the stuff in the French press over this week saying, he's changed the French camp, he's an influence there, he's a massive positive. I'm a believer that there's a fantastic world-class player there, but the evidence right now, could you really say that he deserves a new contract?
Probably not. Probably not at the moment. Probably not at the moment, but
I can see the argument, because you need to keep players under long contracts to retain their value and protect, the investment of the club. But that isn't someone at the moment. Arguably, none of them are playing that they want new deals or new contracts, or even playing for Manchester United at the moment, based on the last game. But I'd like to see a little bit more, rather than this idea that just because he stayed around for so long, just because he stayed at Manchester United, he's worthy of staying a bit longer and getting even more money from Manchester United. There has to be a more powerful argument for me, born out of the way he plays on the pitch.
That's a good point. Another thing you mentioned the last time we spoke is that you thought a centre-back signing for United was probably one of our bigger necessities. And obviously with the defensive frailties we've seen so far this season, how much do you think not buying a centre-back will actually cost us in the season going forward?
Well, I've got to say, I think they might get away with it by not letting Chris Smalling go, or if Eric Bailly hadn't got an injury playing international football. I think now Chris Smalling has gone, and I'm a fan of Chris Smalling, and I was kind of willing him on to get that move to Rome, simply because I think everything he's done for your football club, he deserved that chance to go and play full-time football at somewhere like Rome, where he was loving the life there and loving being a player there, rather than being kind of on the bench if he was lucky at Manchester United. Now, Eric Bailly's not there because he's got an injury. We'll find out perhaps on Friday how serious is that. Then you're back to where you were before. A situation where Harry Maguire doesn't look as though he's comfortable playing for Manchester United right now for whatever reason, whether it's the goalkeeper behind him, whether it's the players around him. And Victor Lindelof, having been taken out of the firing line, looks as though he probably will come back in because Eric Bailly's not fit. Whether Eric Bailly's the answer or not is another massive issue. So I said it was a necessity. I think a lot of people have kind of echoed those thoughts over the past few weeks. I was amazed they didn't go for a centre-back, simply because I think they needed them. We were told there were 7 or 8 there, but, of those 7 or 8, are Phil Jones and Marcus Rojo going to play a part for Manchester United? They're not. Is Axel Tuanzebe? Well, I think they'd like him to. Touch wood, his injuries situation improves this season, but again, he's not an option. And, I've seen Ted Mengi play a number of times for the under-18s and the under-21s, and I think he's somebody who's got real potential. But again, the current situation at Manchester United is you don't want to put someone like that, who hasn't been in that environment, into the spotlight at such a difficult time when Manchester United aren't guaranteed winning football matches. So it's a really long answer to your question, which is right. I think they've missed a trick not getting a centre-back. Just somebody that would allow and unlock Harry Maguire into the player that we have seen on occasions, but certainly seems to be struggling at the moment without, I think, people he trusts around him. And by that I mean players he trusts rather than kind of people he trusts.
Yeah, it does seem a bit disappointing and a bit baffling that we didn't go for a centre-back. It feels like deja vu here, but the rumours regarding Maurizio Pochettino still keep coming up. We still, I remember speaking to, it feels like years ago. I think even when Van Gaal was manager, Maurizio Pochettino was linked with Manchester United. Those rumours aren't going away. How secure do you think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's position is at Manchester United at the minute? Do you think he still has that sort of the Pochettino thing hanging over him? Do you think there is a real sort of danger?
I think you're right, Jay. I think it's certainly hanging over him. What I'm amazed by is that we're still talking, and Maurizio Pochettino, hasn't got a job. I'm amazed by that he isn't playing, coaching a team somewhere else in the world or somewhere else in Europe. And that kind of starts people thinking, I guess, conspiracy theories about where the conversations might be had. I don't think they have. I think Ole retains the support of Manchester United's kind of hierarchy. I don't think, one bad performance or result against Spurs will change that. But I think equally, he will have looked at the last couple of weeks and think, I need to show a change. I need to show something positive going into a game like Newcastle at the weekend. But equally, I've got a situation where many of my key players aren't playing for me. My new signing, Cavani, can't play at Newcastle. Alex Telles has been in Brazil, so may not be in the right condition to even play at St James's Park on Saturday. So it kind of limits his options. But as far as I'm concerned, all the noises coming out of Old Trafford that he's being supported, and I think it's fair to say that I think the overwhelming majority of people I speak to, because of what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has done, not only last season, which I think was amazing, and I think he probably hasn't got enough credit for 3 semi-finals and finishing third, but clearly what he achieved as a player, I think gives him an awful lot of goodwill, more goodwill than the likes of Van Gaal and Mourinho would have had. But equally, that goodwill doesn't go on forever, and he knows that as well. He knows it has to be about results and progress, and based on what we've seen so far this season, the results haven't been good enough, the progress hasn't been good enough, and you can't see that gap between Manchester United and Manchester City and Liverpool being closed on the evidence of what we've seen, can you?
No, you can't. There has been rumours or talk, and again, I don't know how sort of concrete these are, that maybe there's a situation where Ole could be moved into a different role. Do you see any weight in that? Do you think it's either he's going to keep his job or move on, or do you think there could be I won't say a happy medium, because I don't think it is a happy medium, but a situation where he maybe moves into a director of football role or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see it right now, because I don't think I'd go for it if I was him, if that makes sense. I mean, I'm not Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, so clearly he has different thoughts on that. And he loves being part of Manchester United. He loves being the manager of your football club. That doesn't mean that makes him deserving of that rank or gives him more of an argument than you and I being part of that job. But I think clearly, to take him out of that and put him somewhere else would be a difficult thing pride-wise. I don't think it would work for Manchester United. And I think what's interesting about this is it has kind of opened up the debate about director of football. And I think United have got to kind of examine that really, really carefully and work out what it means to them, bearing in mind that they've not had one, and some of the recruitment issues they've had. I mean, whatever Manchester United say about what happened in the transfer window, it wasn't the transfer window they prepared for. It wasn't the ones that the Manchester United fans expected. And we're left in a situation where, although I love wingers, I was a winger, and I love people who can run fast, cross the ball and make you excited, there's an argument to say it wasn't what Manchester United needed in this window anyway, whether it's Jadon Sancho or whether it's Pellistri or whether it's Diallo. Do you need any of those players when you've got someone like Mason Greenwood who can play on the right? And the necessity, I think, as you quite rightly said, would have been to spend some cash on a centre-back. There are a lot of kind of unanswered questions in the transfer window. I'm excited that some really good young players have signed for Manchester United, and that's great. I think Cavani, could be someone like a Zlatan or a Henrik Larsson, but clearly the fears are he becomes a Sanchez or someone like that. And equally, I think Telles is probably someone who can improve the options there. But I think in terms of Manchester United and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, I think he's manager. I don't see him being anything else, when or if the decision is made to take that role away from him. And as I say, I don't think there's any indication that that's going to happen anytime soon.
Yep. So as you basically just mentioned, if you look at the transfer window in its entirety, what is the realistic expectation for United this season?
Cool, that's a really good question. That's probably one that I'm going to ask Ollie on Friday. It's hard to know. I actually thought there'd be some momentum from last season. I don't know about the two of you, but I saw some real things there whereby the positives were that Manchester United got their belief back. They seemed to shore up some of their defensive problems. They were going to score goals, and they were a goal threat throughout the team. Now, the problem seemed to me on the outside looking in, Ollie knew his 11, trusted his 11, but ran them into the ground. And I don't think perhaps that 11 have recovered from that. And I think you then look at the quality of the options he's got and wonder why he hasn't changed it round, why Donny van der Beek hasn't been playing or hasn't started a game for Manchester United, and those sort of issues. And a lot of things don't make sense at the moment. And I know it sounds as though I might be kind of towing the line a little bit and arguing on Ollie's behalf, but I don't think the players had enough rest. I think there's no coincidence that some of the teams that played right through into August in the Champions League and the Europa League are the ones that are having problems, whether it be Wolves, Manchester City or Manchester United. But equally, there is something odd here, isn't there? Manchester United losing 6-1 at home to Spurs, Liverpool losing to Aston Villa 7-2. There's some strange stuff going on, and I know it's not what you want to talk about, but I think the fact that fans aren't in an environment like Old Trafford, I think the ability to kind of galvanise themselves when things aren't going well, I think it's probably as much about the character of this team. And I think there is a weakness there. I think there is a little bit of a flaw and a fragileness. And I think their ability to kind of self-motivate seems to be lacking when there aren't, a crowd there, when there aren't fans there willing them on to do something. And I think that's a gap that he needs to look at, Manchester United needs to look at, with fans, not on the horizon of coming back, and think, how do we kind of bridge that gap? Because we need to get these players, when things aren't going right, to kind of pull together, because they weren't pulling together against Spurs. If anything, they were lucky it was only 6, weren't they?
In some ways.
Unfortunately, yeah, you're right.
That's a horrible thing to say.
Yeah.
Alex Ferguson walk into the dressing room when it was Tottenham and say, it's Tottenham, lads. That's
how I see it.
That's all I need to say.
Yeah.
And Martial gets his penalty, and you think, wow, everything's going to be all right. And then suddenly it all just goes wrong. And you're not trying to tell me that sending off a player really affected that performance, because it just seemed to me that they just downed tools for whatever reason. And it was really, really worrying. And, an hour into that game, you almost wanted the referee to say, come on, let's stop this and just give the points to Spurs and start again.
100%. I thought at one point it was going to be like, it could have been 8 or 9. Genuinely.
I stopped watching, Jay.
And that's the thing that, and I know I can see your faces and you're peeved again, having been sort of really, really pleased about the way the club was going. But this is what makes Manchester United special from the outside. You have these huge highs and these massive lows, and there is nothing in the middle. And that's why people want to talk about it all the time. That's why they want to listen to opinions. But at the moment, it seems like you said, Jay, deja vu. We're going back in cycles here at the moment. And if ever a team needed a performance, at Newcastle on Saturday, it's this Manchester United team. And then you look at last year's performance, they lost their 1-0. And you kind of look at the similarities here. They lost against Crystal Palace. It seems to be almost Groundhog Day. And I'd love to be talking really positively, and wish we could kind of reel this back to 3 months ago, where everything looked like it was bright, because I'm surprised things aren't quite what they were. And I thought the togetherness there was more than it actually apparently is on the evidence that we've seen over the last couple of games.
In agreement. But so basically, kind of looking forward, some may argue like getting the impact we saw from Bruno Fernandes, like as a January mid-season transfer window, is a bit of an anomaly. It's a bit rare. So how realistic is it that you think United will actually get a game-changing signing in January?
I don't think it is. I don't want to make people feel sad or blue about January, bearing in mind we're sort of in the middle of October at the moment. And I worry that Manchester United fans are already coming to January thinking, let's find someone who can save us. But I think it is an exception. It is one of those kind of blips. You don't get many kind of Bruno Fernandes popping up every year. And I think we need to look at him as well. I thought, and certainly what was sold to me, is that Donny van der Beek would come in and almost be a rotation policy with Pogba and Fernandes, and him to give basically the fittest or the best combination for each game. We haven't seen that so far. Now, is it because Donny van der Beek isn't match fit? Is it because he's not trusted yet by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? Is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer thinking, I know my 11, I don't want to change that because they delivered? Well, that 11 or that 10 didn't deliver against Tottenham Hotspur. And you'd hope to see, I think, from Manchester United's point of view, there might be changes on Saturday. But as I've said, there's no Cavani. Tellez has come back from Brazil. So it might be as you were. And just show me that you've got some character and you've got some courage. Because, they are two things that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer had as a player in abundance. And that's what he expected from his teammates. Right now, you'd say that's the major question mark against Manchester United. Not the ability of some of these players, but I think the character and just how they perform when things aren't going right. Because, I didn't see many people in that Spurs game looking around at their teammates and thinking, I need to help him out. Nobody wanted the ball. They could see what was happening, and it was a really, really worrying performance.
I just want to pick you up on that, James, because me and you spoke. I remember speaking outside Old Trafford for about a year ago, or maybe a bit less, about leadership at Old Trafford and about the lack of leaders, and that was an issue. And we were talking, and the evidence is there. You're losing, as you just mentioned, 6-1 at home to Spurs, and I was watching it as a fan, and I was thinking, where's the leadership here? Who's taking charge of this team? Who's taking charge of the defense? Who's taking charge of just the situation and just saying, come on, this is Manchester United. We can't have that. Do you think that is still a problem, the lack of leaders? Because, again, it does feel like you mentioned Groundhog Day. We're having the same conversations, but I get that impression that there is a sort of a void there when it comes to leaders.
Yeah, I think it's difficult. I think, Harry Maguire is a leader of sorts. I don't think at the moment he's the material to be kind of captain of Manchester United. I hope that doesn't annoy too many Manchester United fans. I think, I'll try and explain that situation. I think it's a big thing to come as the world's most expensive defender into a football club. And I think, bearing in mind what happened in Greece over the summer, I think a difficult situation, and one that clearly seems to have affected him in his mentality. I can also understand from United's point of view, you take away the captaincy of United from someone like Harry Maguire because of what happened in Mykonos. It almost says, right, we believe he's guilty. So they were left with a kind of difficult thing to solve there. I think there's clearly an issue or an argument, that someone like Bruno Fernandes should be Manchester United captain. I'm not sure, again, that works. I think he's, passionate, but I think there's probably, arguably a little bit too much passion there. And you just look around the pitch and you think, who could be captain of this Manchester United side? And I think Marcus Rashford is a candidate, but again, I think he's had his struggles and problems since becoming such a kind of big character and a big personality and a proper kind of UK hero off the pitch. I don't think that's helped his form this season. Although I've got to say, I think he started this season better than he finished last season. But I think you do look around that group of players and think, well, where is the leader? I mean, Ajay or Ronaldo, who do you think kind of is the man that you want like leading Manchester United? I mean, I can give you loads of options, but I'm not a Manchester United fan. Who do you think could do the job?
Personally, for me, I'd like to see it being given to Marcus Rashford. I get where you're coming from. No, not just because I love Marcus Rashford and I genuinely do. But he's United through and through. He is that type of player that, from what I gather, will have a word with the ref, will get in the ref's ear when it needs saying something. He's not that quiet on the pitch. And I get what you mean about his form. I don't think he's quite hit the heights, almost post-injury, that he was pre-injury.
No, I get that. I think there are signs this season that's been better than last season, though.
Yeah. I think hopefully, you saw it, his goal against Brighton, little signs that he's getting there. But I think regardless of whether he's back to his best form or whatever, for me, Marcus is someone who will always give you everything on the pitch. Even if his form isn't great and he's not scoring, he'll always try his best and give his all. And he's United through and through. You can see that when he talks about the club, when he talks about the team, and whenever he does an interview after a defeat, you can see it gets to him.
I think you're right. If you had an issue, if you had to measure who cares the most about your football club who's playing for Manchester United, then it's 10 out of 10 Marcus Rashford. Yeah. That 6-1 would have hurt him, absolutely brutally hurt him. You saw he came out and apologised. He realised what that meant, not only to him, but Manchester United fans. And he realised it wasn't good enough. Sorry, I interrupted.
No. I think, go on. I was interested to see Ronaldo thinks.
I believe it's not one of those where it's remotely clear how in teams of past you can generally see kind of a standout leader or a standout captain. I feel like there's question marks surrounding that when you look at the United squad. Obviously, you mentioned Marcus Rashford. He's still, 23 years old?
22.
Approaching 23 very soon. He's a young lad, and being captain of United is a lot of weight on your shoulders. So it's one of those which we've probably seen in recent times, that Rashford he can deal with the pressure. But I think when you're looking at a captain for somewhere like United, you're looking at, in the past, looking at likes of Roy Keane, etc. We haven't really got any of that in the squad now. So I'm not sure who can pretty much stand out and say, yeah, he's definitely Man United captain. I feel like there's question marks surrounding pretty much anyone being it. But as you said, Harry Maguire has some leadership qualities. But he feels like he's buckling under the pressure a little bit. So I'm not quite sure. I feel like you have to get back to me at some point, but I don't really know.
I think the fact that we're all kind of struggling to name a candidate shows there is a problem. There is an issue there with who should be captain of Manchester United. But also, it's bad that we're talking about a Manchester United captain having the ability to galvanise the people around him. It should be enough that you're pulling on that shirt. That should be all the motivation you need, because the three of us wouldn't have any problem with motivation if someone said, here's a Manchester United shirt, you're playing against Newcastle at the weekend. And I think that's the kind of disconnect that a lot of fans can't quite understand or come to terms with at the moment. That this is a side, a bunch of players that shouldn't need somebody to kick them and encourage them. They should have that in abundance on their own.
100%. In the past, as you mentioned, we've always had leaders, regardless of whether they've had the armband or not. All the great United teams have had, almost 10 captains in the way that, you look throughout the team. There's been Keane, there's been Scholes, there's been Vidic, there's been Rio, there's been Giggs, there's been Neville, there's been Evra. And I know these people have captained United one time or other, but you've always had that sort of core leader. And now it's like you say, it's almost who's the least worst option rather than who's the best. If that makes sense.
You talk about all those people, and I think leadership's really important. But I think what all those people you mentioned had in common is they set standards So it wasn't just about the kind of behaviour aspect or the leadership aspect. It was how they played and carried themselves on the pitch. And I think that's something that this Manchester United side need, perhaps more than people barking orders. Someone who just takes a game, if you like, by the scruff of the neck. It was what Roy Keane used to do, because he carried people with him. It wasn't necessarily that he was going to kill them or all the kind of fright thing that he put on them. It was the fact that, blimey, this guy, he's not going to play in a European Cup final, but he's going to make sure that Juventus get beaten in the semi-final to get Manchester United there. It's that kind of thing, leading by example. And I think what we've seen over 2020, which must be the weirdest year on record, certainly in our lives, is that when things are going well at Manchester United, it looks like a fun place to be, and it was great leading up to those 3 semi-finals and finishing 3rd in the Premier League. And yet, it's another cliche I'm going to trot out, but you find an awful lot about yourselves and a team when things aren't going well. And you've got to say that some of the answers that they're coming up with at the moment are really, really worrying. And you kind of think, is it a case that the more money that is spent on this team, the more characters that are being brought in, the more world-class players, the bigger the problems become? Because it does seem that way at the moment, albeit, we're at the start of a really weird season as part of a weird year. And if they go and play against Newcastle and beat Newcastle well, then maybe it's back on track. But you've got to say, although they've got 1 Premier League win already against Brighton and Hove Albion at Brighton, they didn't even deserve to win that game.
No, no, yeah, it could have been.
And it sounds really bad. It sounds awful.
Yeah,
I've got to remind myself in League One, and they're top of League One, which I'll be telling everybody about that. But your faces just tell the story. It's just like, oh, come on.
I know. You've got to be realistic, though, haven't we? I mean,
the last 7 years.
Yeah, we can't be too delusional. Just quickly, on the, you mentioned earlier about, you sort of touched upon, you don't see sort of a big game-changing signing coming in January. There's already, I mean, it sounds bad, we've just finished the transfer window, but as you mentioned, United fans are already looking at January and saying, who can we get? You said there won't be a big game-changing signing, or you don't think there will be, so I'm guessing that you can forget about a Jadon Sancho rumour again this summer. Well, not a rumour, but Jadon Sancho in January.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if big surgery has to be done in January, I think there'll be the will to do that. I've got to say, and I know I'm pretty alone in this, and people don't like me for saying it. I admired the ethics of not writing £100 million check for Jadon Sancho. I said I didn't think Manchester United would do that last time we spoke, and I'm supportive of the fact they didn't do that. What worries me slightly, having kind of waved a big flag saying, well, look at the principles of not paying £100 million for Jadon Sancho, suddenly the whole big picture thing, and thinking, well, again, the two don't marry up, bearing in mind we're talking about ethics on one side and maybe opportunism on the other. But, putting that all to one side, I think if Manchester United needed to buy players in January, or a big player like that, there would still be the will to do that. I think, we've got to see what Pellistри's like. I think, from what I'm told, he might be somebody who's on the periphery of the first team squad, and they'll take him through. I think Amad Diallo could be someone really special, judging by the sort of people I've spoken to in Italy. And I know, again, we're waiting to January, so maybe he could be that player that kind of unlocks things, but there's a lot to expect from an 18-year-old coming to the Premier League, having played 3 or 4 times so far for Atalanta. So I think next summer will be more intriguing, and certainly the kind of impression I get is that Manchester United would probably go back into the water for Jadon Sancho, bearing in mind, however, that there'll be more fish circling, because it will be a cheaper deal to do because he'd have 1 year left on his contract. And I think equally, they will be in the market for a centre-back. But it's really hard. United over the last 3 transfer windows, I think have spent anybody else more than anybody else in Europe in terms of the kind of net spend, i.e. players in and out. And yet, they seem to be in a bigger mess than they were than the last time we spoke before this summer's window. So it doesn't seem to me that spending's the answer. What I do think, and I want to try and be positive, because I'm a positive person who tries to do the whole glass half full. I think the foundations of your club are good. I think there are better people working in the academy. I think there are improvements there. There are good young players there. I think what's interesting is just what that kind of pathway looks like, from being told these are the best players in Europe, we're getting them from left, right, and centre, and bringing you into Manchester United. Well, I think a lot of Manchester United fans would like to see that process happen a little bit quicker, of getting them into a first team squad. And maybe although Teden Mengi isn't one of those players they've handpicked from across Europe, maybe he's the start of that process, because certainly people at Manchester United are talking really big about him, and he seems somebody who's grounded, who understands the opportunity he's got, and has shown as the basis of the under-18s and under-21s that he's a leader. I'm not saying making Manchester United captain, but he might be someone who knows his own mind. And at the moment, I question whether some of these United players, once they get on the pitch, do know what's expected of them and do know their own minds.
No, that's a fair. I'm really excited about Teden Mengi as well. I'm with you on that. I think you're right about, obviously, you can't rush him in now, but certainly from what I've seen and from what people I've spoken to have seen a lot of him. He seems like the real deal, and there's a lot of excitement around him. And in a position that we do need a player like that in as well. Just one question from me, final question from me. You mentioned there about earlier on. You mentioned about the fans not being in the ground, and I mean, where do you think we are with that? I mean, there's a lot of frustration from United fans that we can't get in the ground. I know there's frustration for fans everywhere, but especially with the way the results have gone. How far do you think we are away from seeing fans in the ground in the Premier League?
I honestly don't know. I keep asking that question of people of all levels. And I think, the one thing we have to recognise chatting now is there's an awful lot of work going in at Manchester United as there has in Rochdale, where I was last week. A lot of man hours gone into coming up with plans to make fans safe in stadiums, and suddenly being told, a week before they thought that might happen, it wasn't going to happen, was a real kick in the teeth. I think with everything that's going on at the moment, it's really difficult. I've got a real soft spot for a team in Northern Ireland called Larne, who got a fantastic result last night against Crusaders. That means nothing to you. But it was like one of their big results. They had 700 people at their stadium last night. And the difference watching online that made, not only to the atmosphere of the game and watching it, but also to the players. The fact that they can kind of get something from the crowd. There are reactions, even sway referees, which, is an Old Trafford kind of benefit, if you like. None of those things are going on right now. And I can't see a situation where fans are let in, especially when, everywhere else is kind of screaming that things are getting worse and worse and worse. And we're, albeit in Greater Manchester at the moment, we're tier 2, but, perhaps inevitably tier 3 down the road, or even a lockdown. But again, the question is, whenever other people can seem to do it safely, and we're talking about, almost a non-professional league in Northern Ireland, albeit Larne are a professional team, they managed to get 600 or 700 people in, properly safe, in a tiny ground. It's not a sophisticated world-class 21st century ground like Old Trafford is, or like the City of Manchester Stadium is, or like Anfield is. So I find it really, really frustrating. But I can also understand the things I've been told that, it's almost controlling the controllables. You can control people inside the stadiums. I think that the worry is transport to and from, and just people outside the stadiums kind of, being together and breaking this whole social distancing thing. So I can see powerful arguments either way. It's just frustrating seeing the fact that some people are getting fans in and getting the benefit of that. And those fans equally are getting to see their football, and the rest of us are watching on laptops and televisions.
No, it's especially when you saw this. I know it's not completely related, but we saw the scenes. It was in the Palladium with an evening with Arsene Wenger, and it's just you're looking at it going, really? Is that? We just
wonder what matters. What are the rules here? And I don't want to get into Royal Albert Hall and grouse shooting, but just mention those kind of two things. No fans in football. The only thing I'm pleased about is I've mentioned my little team of Larne, which you're now educating. I want you to work out. Have a look about that.
I remember that. No, I remember that.
I know. I didn't see that one coming, James. I'm not going to lie.
The last night they were incredible. 4-0 against one of the best teams in Northern Ireland, who played against Wolves in the Europa League last season. So they're making strides. So
yeah, up the line, exactly.
Up the line.
You'll be smiling at least.
Well, this is it. I've watched anything now, to be honest with you, see some goals and a win. Might be the way forward.
No, but now finally, what seems like almost like a bit of a non-question, how would you basically sum up the mood like around the club? Is there any truth around Bruno Fernandes being unhappy with Ole? Is there any truth to that, or is that basically just rumours? Well, obviously, we saw a bit of the drama and the controversy surrounding him being taken off at half-time and different reports.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people saying different things. I think there's an argument, and you're going to say, well, he's trotting it out. He's fudging his answer to a non-answer to a non-question, if you like. Yeah. If Bruno Fernandes wasn't annoyed by that performance, then there's a serious problem with Manchester United. All of those players should have come off, not necessarily having a go at the manager, but having a go at each other about some of the standards that you expected of a Manchester United team, which weren't delivered in any way, shape or form. So I think, it's inevitable there were words said there. If it was a quiet dressing room, then there really are deep problems at Manchester United. So I think probably words were said, but whether they were directed at Ole or not, or whether it was just sheer frustration, I think he's shown enough in his time at Manchester United to show he cares. And I think whether he cares quite about Manchester United in the same way as, say, Marcus Rashford, he hasn't been here very long, or whether he cares about the effect it has, the reflection it makes on him, or the fact that he wants to win football matches. That's why he's come to the Premier League. That's why he's come to Manchester United. All of those are good reasons for why I think he probably was upset. And I think, what we said in this kind of discussion about leadership and captains is, maybe there weren't enough people at halftime against Spurs having their say, having a go and talking passionately about what Manchester United should be achieving on the pitch rather than what they were kind of serving up against Tottenham Hotspur. In terms of the mood, I think it's really difficult. I mean, the transfer window wasn't great in the sense that everybody wanted, for whatever reason, Jadon Sancho. That didn't happen. I think Manchester United kind of left all their eggs in one basket and then had to move very quickly, albeit I think that the targets they brought in were people they've been looking at. I don't think it was a question of suddenly grabbing a guide and thinking, right, we need him or him, although it might have appeared like that simply because the business was done so quickly. I think especially with Pellistri and I think with Toure, the two wingers, I think they're players that have been looked at extensively by Manchester United, and I think they realised they had to do something and fill that position, bearing in mind they'd said that right wing was going to be this all-important position for this window. And I think that thing, the whole Spurs thing carried into the window, so it became like, oh, grief, what are they going to do? And then because it wasn't perceived to be enough, and because you've got to say that Cavani might be a risk, and Telles we don't know anything about. So of the four, Telles is probably the best option. We're hoping, of course, that Cavani proves to be as good a 33-year-old as Zlatan was at 34 or Henrik Larsson was at 36. But there's an unknown to that. So I think the mood right now is we're probably back where we were, to use that phrase, Groundhog Day, where we were in October last year, where people were wondering, where's this Manchester United team going to go? What's Ollie all about? And how does he kind of change it around? What's the direction here? Because, as I say, leading up to the end of last season, it just felt as though a lot of things were being answered. And now we're asking the same questions again. And I think, as I've said before in this conversation, Manchester United need to stand up at Newcastle United on Saturday night and prove what they're about and prove that whole Tottenham thing is out of their system. And I think the difficult thing to do that is the fact that many of those key players haven't been here. Will arrive back tomorrow on Thursday or Friday, going into a game where I think people are expecting an awful lot. And I know it's not a popular thing that it's a pay-per-view game on Saturday night, but you couldn't have better ingredients for people watching. The haters will want to hate because they want to watch and see Manchester United struggle again, and the United fans, whilst watching through their eyes, will want to be proved wrong after a seriously bad weekend 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely.
I'm definitely expecting a reaction in it.
I'm always loath to use the word must win, because I think when you say that and then you don't win, then people say, well, I thought that was must win. But it does have that feel, doesn't it? It does have a feel like
it really does. But then you look at the fixtures you got next, and you think, blimey,
our run in the next couple of months looks
going. Because you just can't. Where everybody else is playing, PSG is not easy. Arsenal, Chelsea, Everton. Look at me. Look at. As I said, you didn't deserve to beat Brighton and Hove Albion.
There's always Palace at home.
There's always the Carabao Cup. Doing all right.
Pep will tell you that. Pep always tries
to
do that. It's a trophy. Don't forget the trophy.
That's it. I tell you what, I'll take any trophy at a minute.
But I think and I know you're trying to wrap up, and quite rightly, but I think it does take you back to kind of a semi-final, the final semi-final thing with the FA Cup, and thinking, look, why did you not go for that? Why didn't you just get a trophy in the bank? Bearing in mind you'd already got your Champions League, you didn't need the Europa League. Get that trophy in the bank, and also bank a little bit of faith. And because I think because of that, although last season was a big achievement, it's kind of, in the league it was great. It did everything that we wanted it to do, and not more. But when it came to the crunch, we couldn't deliver that trophy. And I think that would have given Ole Gunnar Solskjaer a little bit more time, because it feels right now as though even the people that are behind him, in terms of the Manchester United support, are thinking, hang on a moment, what direction are we going in here?
No, I think you make a great point, James. I mean, no Manchester United fan I know is happy with 3 semi-finals. You're just not.
And I don't think he is either. But that's what I didn't understand, because he knew how much winning meant to Manchester United, how much winning trophies meant to him as a player. And I can't quite work out what that team was all about in the semi-final and why it didn't take through to a final that they could have won. They could have beaten Arsenal. I've got no doubts about that. That was a trophy that was up there to win.
100%. And it seems that Arsenal are looking a lot more positive under Arteta, and with that trophy under the belt. I know they're not in the Champions League, but they've got a trophy. Aubameyang signed on his deal. I think, you know, there's a real air around there that things are on the up while at United. Sorry?
Partey, I know you're upset about that as well.
Don't get me started on Thomas Partey. We'll be here all day. I'm going to have to delete a lot of tweets, I think, when he signed for Arsenal. James, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for coming on the channel. You always come on here.
I just wish it could have been more positive. I'm sorry, guys.
You did the best you could do with what's going on, to be honest with you.
It almost feels like we could just replay the old interview next in the next
It was not better last time round, so go and do that.
It's the same thing all over again. But no, we appreciate you coming on. It's been great chatting to you.
Jay, thanks very much, Ronaldo. Love to see you.
Right, see you in a bit, man.
Thanks a lot. Right. Cheers, James. So that was James Cooper from Sky Sports. Ronaldo, it wasn't too cheery, but we didn't expect him to be, did we, to be honest with you?
It wasn't too cheery, but it was very realistic. A lot of realism in there, man.
A lot of realism. Yeah, as you mentioned, we'll be going, we'll be looking ahead to the Newcastle game, and we'll have the watch along and all the fan cams from that as well. I've been Jay. That's been Ronaldo. This has been the Tier 1 Transfer Podcast. Big thanks again to James Cooper. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.